everyone. My name is Juliana Hawk, and I help people who may or may not have been diagnosed with ADHD, and I help you go from suffering to feeling in control and productive. I'm so happy to be here. And today we're talking about, the benefits of working with an informed ADHD coach. We can all, as we all know, we can all call ourselves an ADHD coach, but what is the real difference between working with a certified coach, a qualified coach that can really help you with your self-discovery and your self-awareness? And that's we're going to be diving in a little bit deeper today of those benefits of working with an informed coach. And to do that, I invited another wonderful ADCA student, Sarah DeGrave, to discuss the value of working with an informed ADHD coach. So I'm going to introduce Sarah. So Sarah DeGrave, she is a professional theater artist and ADHD informed coach for creatives and solopreneurs. She is passionate about helping fellow artists and freelancers clarify their goals, build support systems, and find ways of working that works for them. Her training includes courses with ADD Coach Academy, Mentor Coach, Transformation Academy, and more. She combines her knowledge of creative brain wiring and effective coaching tools with her professional experience in the arts to provide a unique, holistic approach to helping her clients. Welcome, Sarah, and thank you so much. And, before we dive into our conversation topic, let's start off with something more fun of, what has it, an ADHD coach has different types of focuses, and we all have different types of, not genres, but we all have like to focus on different things. So in your experience, what has been, finding the right coach that works specifically for your needs? Or I'm asking that correctly.
Yeah, I think sometimes, like, depending on what we're working on and where we're at in our lives, like we might want to work with a general ADHD coach, or like um, someone whose focus is really on working with helping you learn more about your ADHD and identify where it's showing up. And then sometimes, like, the people I work with tend to be more specifically focused either on building a business or working in the arts and kind of working on their creative career. And it's important to them to have someone who understands those things and the ADHD. So, like, the reason I call myself an ADHD informed coach for creatives and solopreneurs, instead of just like an ADHD coach, is because my focus tends to be more on the business goals and the creative goals. And then we're doing that through an ADHD lens. So bringing in like an awareness, and as patterns come up, I can help them identify, like, yeah, this is a totally normal, like, kind of ADHD common thing that happens. And here are some ADHD friendly solutions that work for some people that you might want to experiment with. And just kind of helping to release some of the shame as it shows up around these particular goals. Or like, I recently met with a coach whose focus is on money and finances. So sometimes you'll want to seek out a coach kind of specifically in a certain area where you have goals, or where you want someone who really understands that field or industry or topic specifically, and also like understands that you are coming at it as an ADHD person. And then other times you might want someone who can really just more walk you through, like, here, let me help you understand ADHD in general, and maybe like figure out how it's impacting you, and solutions. So I think that's where it's valuable to kind of think about your specific needs and like what you're trying to get out of it, and then look for someone who matches that.
That sounds, that's right on how I would, how I feel, especially navigating, finding a coach, and, on the other end of helping people find me as a coach. But, I don't want to ignore the fact that you say the word informed ADHD coach, and I would love to get a little bit more curious on where did that the word you chose, informed, where did that come from? Did you have an experience that didn't work for you or did work for you? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think that comes from just me. And so I use ADHD informed to describe my coaching because I am wanting to convey that like we're coaching through an ADHD lens, but like the focus isn't usually on your ADHD as a like as a separate thing, that like our focus is just talking about that. It's usually talking about like your creative goal, and then it's like, oh, here's what's happening, and here this is kind of an ADHD thing, and um, like this is common, and this is a common challenge that shows up for, let's say, like actors with ADHD have this kind of specific challenge. So that's why I use it. And also um, because while I have done training with ADCA, I've done like the first couple of courses, I haven't completed like an ADHD coaching certification. And I think it is helpful, depending on what you're looking for in a coach, to look at that and be like, what is this person's training, and also like what is their specialty and their focus. And there are a few reasons why I haven't chosen to go fully down that path with getting a certification yet as specifically an ADHD coach. And part of it is I've kind of pulled my training from a lot of different areas. So I've done like life coach, general life coach training with Mentor Coach, and I've done, ADHD specific training with ADCA, which I think is really, having done those things, I can see the importance of them and how they have changed my approach as a coach, and like what the difference between working with someone who is like hasn't is like ADHD aware. So I think there are a lot of coaches now who are aware of ADHD, and they might be like, yeah, I get it. I'm totally accepting and like affirming, like ADHD affirming, I think, as a coach. And that's not necessarily the same as like having kind of a well-rounded um, education around different ways that ADHD can show up, and like what are the common traits associated with ADHD. So sometimes those coaches are just working from either their personal experience, or like knowing someone who has ADHD, or knowing that ADHD is a thing and having kind of a general awareness and being affirming, which I think is important because there are also people out there who are not ADHD affirming, who will not kind of acknowledge that it's a thing and that it has challenges and that it needs, a different approach than regular coaching sometimes. So I think like there are kind of these stages of, there's like ADHD affirming coaches, and then there's like people who are ADHD aware at a more like another level up where they experience it themselves, and that brings a new level of understanding and compassion. And maybe they've done like a lot of some reading and research, and so they have a little bit of an understanding. And then there's like the next level up, which is where I would put myself, which is like ADHD informed, where like I've taken the time to do specific education with an ADHD authority institution, so that and I learned new things with each of those courses, with the simply, and then with the personal transformation you learn a lot, and you're also in groups of people who are sharing their experiences, and you're hearing like, how is that different from how I experience ADHD, or here are lots of different types of challenges that people have, because there are certain traits of ADHD that I don't relate to as much, especially as an inattentive, more leaning person. Like I have to sometimes remind myself like, oh, sometimes people who are more on the hyperactive end, that's going to show up differently. They're going to struggle with different things. And it's important to be, knowledgeable about that, so that you're not just like overlooking or dismissing those challenges. And then there's like people whose focus has really been like becoming an ADHD expert. And I think sometimes I would refer someone to a coach who is, taken that step because the client really is more interested in focusing on their ADHD and learning all about it. And that's just not really my particular area of strength or interest. And of course, as interest-based people, like we need to follow our interests, and my interests lie more in like, how do I help you build your business? How do I help you, build a creative practice that works for you as an ADHD person? And so I think there's kind of these tiers, and it's important to know how that can impact you as a client also. Like I've worked with people at a lot of those tiers, and I do notice the difference. And I think especially like now I have enough knowledge to advocate for myself and to recognize like, oh, this isn't a good fit for me because this person is doing things or saying things that, even though they're saying like they're an ADHD aware person, they're not really saying things that are in alignment with that. But I think especially if you're more at the beginning of your ADHD journey, or maybe you were diagnosed as a kid, but you're just kind of coming back to wanting to try coaching, and you haven't done like a ton of your own, like deep work around it, then you might not be able to pick up on those things. Like you might not know that like the discomfort you're feeling working with a coach is because they're not really acting in a way that is supportive of your ADHD challenges. And so then I think that's where it can also be really important to look at what is someone's experience around the topic, and education, or are they like a certified ADHD coach, or have they at least done. I know people who have like full life coaching certifications, and then they've gone back and they've taken like supplemental education, so they might not be a certified ADHD coach because they've already like done like a full life coach certification, but they've done, like, you can see where they trained with. There's only like a few really ADHD coach academies at the moment, so you can kind of see like where they've trained.
Yeah, that sounds and that being said, you can go to ADCA, PAC, or ICF. I believe it's PAC that is more ADHD versus the life coach. So that's what we know for right now. And thank you for sharing all those amazing like little tiers of ADHD coaches, because it is so true. As we build that self-awareness, we learn so much more about ourselves and ADHD. And as we all know, ADHD is such an iceberg of what the symptoms we see outwards, but really what's going inwards. And so many of our clients are still navigating through those things and getting misdiagnosed. But what I really also wanted to piggyback off of was, I had two questions, but one thing is, you said your creative goal. So I was curious what that it looks like, or what that is when you, this was like maybe when you first answered my response earlier.
My internet might be a little spotty.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to piggyback off of what you mentioned a few moments ago, but you've mentioned your creative goal. And I thought that was really interesting. So do you work on a creative goal with your clients? What does that look? What is your one creative goal?
Yeah, I work with a lot of people kind of in the arts. So they're really oftentimes trying to either get somewhere in their career or do something like write a book or write a play or produce something. So they have these specific kind of creative career-based goals or creative interest-based goals. Not everyone is doing it professionally, but things like that can be really overwhelming. And as a as a theater artist myself, looking back at kind of how my life has gone, I noticed a lot of areas where undiagnosed ADHD was showing up, and it was really holding me back from building and maintaining relationships, which is a huge part of, you know, any career usually, but especially in the arts. Like that part of it, kind of feeling like there were a lot of missed opportunities or opportunities where I didn't follow through on them. So those kind of experiences that I've had in my career, I'm now kind of trying to help other people navigate and hopefully feel a little bit more successful in where they're at, and also kind of build the skills to get to where they want to be. But it's focused around like their creative work a lot of times.
So when you say your creative goal, is it more, it's not just like a mantra, it's something you're working towards collectively. Sorry.
Yeah, it's like a business goal or a health goal. It's just um, in the realm of creativity.
I love that. So when you're thinking of, you know, your creative goal, can you give an example of what a creative goal could be? I'm sorry, did my internet go out? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, my internet's cutting out a little bit, and
But I was curious if
losing
you
out.
could, can you hear me? I wanted to see if you
Yes.
could give us an example of maybe a creative goal that maybe someone has used or said, or if you, maybe an example.
Yeah. Um, I mean, writing a book is a common one. I think I've worked with several people who have a goal to write a book, whether it's a nonfiction kind of personal development or a fiction novel. Other goals have been around like building a portfolio of work. So whether you're a visual artist who's wanting to kind of get your work more out in the world, or with theater and singers, lots of times like working on audition repertoire is a thing that can be really, it's like it can be a really monotonous task that you're doing by yourself, and it's one of those things that's easy to procrastinate on because it's just like a drag. So, but you might have a goal of getting cast at more places, and in order to get cast you need to practice consistently. Like as a singer you really need to be singing consistently, and that's something that I've struggled with a lot as a professional singer, is like keeping that muscle in shape, and also like keeping my audition book where I want it, so having the right pieces in it that suit me really well. It takes actually a lot of work, and it's a constant, like it's a never ending, you never stop auditioning, you're always like looking for the next gig, and those are the things that you're often doing alone in your house by yourself, and it can just be hard to kind of keep up with that. So that's one. And another one that popped into my head is like I've worked with some people either on kind of their social media presence, which is not something that I'm great at, but it's, I think that's an important thing, kind of like just talking about finding a right coach for you. Like you don't necessarily need to find a coach who is good at the thing that you are trying to do, because they're not giving you advice on how to do it. That would be more of like a consultant or something. But they're kind of helping you figure out what is your block. Like what does being on social media in a successful way look like for you personally, and then like where are you kind of getting stuck in showing up in that way. And so you don't necessarily need someone who's a social media expert if you want to be on social media more.
I hear you. And that is so true. And it's most of the time it's just asking ourselves what's getting in your way.
Yeah. And
Um,
lots of times,
but
there just to throw in there, lots of times actually working with like more of a consultant or, and let's just take this example of social media. In that instance, if your issue is more around that, like you don't really know how you want to show up, or you don't know why you're not doing it, but you just don't feel good about it, like working with a social media expert is maybe not going to be a good fit because, especially if they're not like ADHD informed, they might just give you all of these to dos and you're like, but I don't know how to get myself to do them, or I get burnt out when I do them, or, you know, all of these other issues that actually are, it's not necessarily that you need someone to tell you a strategy of how to do social media. It's more like you need someone to coach you through the process of where you're getting hung up and like what you actually want to get out of it in the end. Like what's the goal? What would feel good? And then what's a process toward that that also feels good?
oh, I just love everything you're saying. I didn't want to interrupt. But so, when you're meeting with, someone, and I really like what you said when you said keep up with that. And then you mentioned like the strategy aspect, because I lost count how many people asked me for strategies for their ADHD. And, but what
Mm.
I wanted to say to you is, you mentioned keep up with that. How do you help your clients keep up with their creative goal?
I think it does get into like asking the right questions. So like I think that's kind of what a powerful coach can do is ask good questions, listen well and ask good questions. And that's kind of the difference between more of a consultant or strategist and more of like a life coach or ADHD coach. Um, and so kind of getting into what I find helpful is asking, when you sit down to do the thing, well, there's a couple of phases. So it's like first, like where does the train go off the rails is kind of what I'm trying to figure out with them. So I'm like, so here's the thing you want to do. First step, like, are you remembering that you want to do it? So like sometimes it's just a matter of I forget that I even have that goal, or I forget to, let's take practicing music as an example. Let's say your goal is to practice for a half an hour 3 times a week and you just never remember. So then we're going to look at strategies around, okay, well, how might you better be able to remind yourself about this goal? Or how can you do like habit stacking where you know, put it next to something else that you've already got a routine around, those types of strategies. And then so sometimes that's the first hurdle. And if that's not an issue, they're like, well, I remember, like I put it on my calendar and I remember, but I look at it and I just like don't want to do it. Like that's for me. Like I can put it on my planner, but if I don't want to do it, like it's really hard to do it. So then it's more around asking questions. Okay, like what comes up for you when you look at that on your calendar, when you sit down to do it, like what thoughts come up, or like what physical sensation, like do you get really like antsy and restless in your body? Do you get really anxious? Like what kind of comes up? And then looking at what that might tell us about what what needs are there. So I kind of look at it as like identifying your needs and then finding strategies to kind of suit that, or to help support your needs, to help get your needs met. And sometimes you need a little bit more novelty, or something that's going to spark that dopamine, and you need to kind of find a way to build that in, or you need more consistency in your routines, or you need more freedom in your routine. So it's like different for each person, and it's just about looking like what's coming up in that moment. Or like, is there like perfectionism is a big one that I talk about a lot with the people I work with, because I think it's very sneaky and it shows up in ways that we don't even label as perfectionism, but really it is. It's really like this thought that comes up, or this feeling that like, it needs to look a certain way.
Oh, absolutely. And perfectionism comes up all the time. And,
Hmm.
and like you mentioned, like the overall umbrella is the momentum, and then breaking that cycle of perfectionism. So with your creatives, do you have any, anything coming out to you for a way to break perfectionism with your creatives?
I think the first step is just building that self-awareness, like noticing where it's actually coming up and noticing kind of those more sneaky ways that it's showing up and being like, oh, nope, this is a form of perfectionism. Because it might not look like, oh, I think I need to be perfect. Like it might be some other. Um, I think one of the ways I think in AdCut they talked about it, which I thought was interesting. I don't remember like kind of what the source was, but that perfectionism isn't actually a desire to be perfect. It's like a fear of messing up a lot of times. And I think that can sometimes be a more useful way to start assessing what's going on is like not necessarily like where am I trying to be perfect, because you might tell yourself, oh, I don't like on the surface, your brain might be like, I don't think I have to be perfect. I realize people aren't perfect and it's okay to make mistakes, but like sometimes we don't actually feel that in our body. So there's a difference between like cognitively being on that page and like getting your nervous system on that page to where it feels safe to be like, I'm going to put this out there and there might be a mistake in it, or like it might not be quote unquote good enough. And I just need to get used to being feeling safe in my body to make mistakes.
And that is really important, and that is definitely a skill that needs that gets easier to build with time. And it also is really hard if have that first how do I feel feelings in my body, but then to build that awareness to feel them, it's really very powerful and very impacting. That's where self-discovery was so
Mm-hmm.
amazing. I had to take a moment. But so this is probably one of my last questions coming up here, but I want we mentioned a lot about different types of, interventions for ADHD and, treating your ADHD with psychoeducation. What are questions that a consumer should ask when they're looking to interview a coach, whether it's for creatives, or and for an informed coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think it can be helpful if it's not like if it's not somewhere on their website, or you don't have the information on kind of what their background is, just asking them a little bit about what they're if ADHD coaching, which I'm guessing for people watching this, like you have ADHD and that's important to you to have someone who is informed, um, to just ask them like kind of what's your background around ADHD, and and that will give you a little bit of information on kind of what approach they might take. That's a good, I'm not sure what the exact like best question to ask around this is, but I think another difference between different coaches is just the way that they kind of think about and talk about ADHD. Um, because I kind of take an approach of ADHD, while we have a lot more knowledge around it now, like it's still like there's still a lot we need to learn about like what exactly is it, and it is like this very kind of pathologized set of traits that impact people in different ways, and just the way that I view that as maybe kind of a little different than someone else might be more like, um, here's all the science and like here is the evidence-based treatment. And some people are like, I'm pretty neutral when it comes to like medication or not medication. And I I think definitely you should find a coach who is, when they are working with you, of course, neutral about your choices, about your own journey and your body. But sometimes you might find, just like philosophically, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that someone's approach just kind of matches your own vibe a little bit better than someone else's, and that's fine. And I don't think that like one isn't necessarily better than the other. It's just like, what kind of approach are you looking for? And can you find someone who you feel like is really going to understand that and support you and kind of come at it from the same angle as you?
Yeah, and that is just so important, because, even with my personal experience, I was able to really I was able to overcome barriers by working with a coach that really got to understand my ADHD, and there wasn't like friction between us. So I do think like that is so, having that trust and safety is just the core of, that partnership with your coach is so important. Yeah. So, we
Mm-hmm.
covered a lot today. I'm sorry, the internet's a little bad, but we covered a lot today. So am I leaving out any important information about, working with an informed ADHD coach?
Um, yeah, we did cover a lot. Trying to just scan back in my brain, like if there's anything else I think maybe just the last thing I would say is like trust yourself and what feels right for you and what feels helpful for you. That, um, just like with any coach, there might be someone who's a great fit for you who is more of a general life coach and not necessarily an ADHD coach. And there might be someone who is an ADHD coach who just doesn't feel like the right fit for you. And anytime that you're working with someone and they are maybe like giving you exercises or suggestions that just don't feel right to you, or where you feel like, I don't think this really works for my brain, like it's okay to trust your own knowledge about yourself over even their knowledge about ADHD in general, because every person is different and we all have like multiple layers of things that are going on for us. So no one's going to like be the expert on you. Like you are the only person who can kind of say, yeah, I think that feels like it will work for me, or is something that feels uncomfortable, but I'm willing to try it. Um, and just like really honoring that, not feeling like the coach is the expert and you need to just trust them at all costs and like do whatever they suggest. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't think that will work for me. Do you have another suggestion on how I might approach this? Or here are the thoughts that are coming up when you say that. Can you like help me make this make sense? And sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean you need to like fire that coach. Lots of times it's just like communicating about it, and then from there seeing like how do they respond to communication? Like, is that a good match?
That is so big. And that for me, working with an ADHD coach versus a master coach, as that is so different because a certified ADHD coach will do a great job at asking powerful questions. But what I've noticed with working with a master coach is that there isn't much opportunity for that uncomfortness where like it gets like it's just asking powerful questions that I answer. So and it's all about like, if I have trouble, I do ask for help. Hey, can we pivot? So that's a really great observation that you mentioned, because that is such a big, can really help you make waves with your ADHD, as feeling
Mhm.
comfortable and that trust and safety. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It's really important.
There's actually one other thing that just popped
Yeah.
into my head that I think is really relevant to this conversation and topic, which is don't feel like you have to wait to be at a specific point to get coaching. I think a lot of people feel intimidated to do one on one coaching and they feel like they have to come into it prepared in some way, or like they have to either know what their goal is, or they need to be, for me, working with people who are in business, working on their businesses or working on their creative stuff, creative work. They might come in feeling like, oh, I need to be at a certain place in my business before I can seek this form of support. Like I need to be a professional, or and just know like coaching is for anyone at any stage. And again, it's just about finding the right coach and someone who is accessible to you. Sometimes it's like a financial thing. You feel like, oh, I need to save up $5,000. Um, but know that they're like, I offer sliding scale coaching right now. And then there are lots of people who are in their earlier stages of starting their coaching business, or, getting certified, where you have to do a certain number of paid coaching hours and they are seeking out clients. And just because they're in the earlier stages doesn't mean they're not, like, they might still be a really great coach for you. So just, I guess, encouraging people to seek options and to um, connect with someone like you or me who can tap them into the network of coaches and training. If always, and lots of coaches offer free consultations, so like feel comfortable using those even if you're not sure if that coach is the perfect fit for you, because that's how you find out, like talking to them. And then if they are really helpful coach, oftentimes they will be more than willing to refer you to someone else if like you're outside of their price range or you're not really in their focus. Like for me, if someone comes to me and they're like, I really want to work with someone whose focus is just on like educating around ADHD and helping me navigate that, or navigate that in parenting, areas where it's not my area of expertise, I'm always happy to refer people. So just start meeting with coaches, and also like don't don't feel like you need to make a decision about the first one right away. You can meet with a few people and then make a decision.
Oh my, absolutely. And I tell this, something I'm not super happy or proud of, but I did interview 6 coaches when I first sought out for ADHD coaching. And believe it or not, like I actually felt like I didn't vibe with any of them. And when I say vibe, like, ADHD coaching is very intimate. ADHD is a very intimate space. And that's something that I'm trying to like educate more people about, because, ADHD is so personal to us. And like the
Yeah.
only way we're going to break those barriers is by talking about the hard things. And so for me, like you can tell right away if you feel comfortable. But
Mm-hmm.
I was in a desperate place. This is even before I started with ADCA. This is when I just sought out my coaching, because my ADHD was in a really bad place and I needed help. That with much ADHDers, we're in flight or flight mode, and we're waving our flag for SOS. So but so don't give up. Just for our listeners, if you're interviewing coaches, don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. Take care of yourself and take care of your ADHD. And sometimes if giving someone even a second try actually isn't the worst thing in the world, because that was really hard for me, is to give someone a second try. But sometimes I might have just woken up on the wrong side that day, or it could have been that person who just wasn't them true self, their authentic self. So don't judge a book by its cover is really what I'm trying to say. So yeah, but thank you for sharing so much of that awesome, insightful like tidbits, because I really hope that our listeners can learn from our experiences, because this ADHD isn't going away for us, and if we can start, telling more people about, how to find the right coach and what questions to ask, could really help other people. So thank you for your time for today. And thank you for talking about ADHD coaching and, an informed coach. So Sarah, can you please share with our listeners how they can get in touch with you if they'd like to get in touch with you?
Yes. My website is alignmentandalchemy.com. That's also where I'm at on Instagram, which is the best social media. It's alignment_and_alchemy is my social media. I think there's another account out there that doesn't have the underscores, and that one's not me. Those are the two best places, and you can contact me through there. You can email me at hello@alignmentandalchemy.com. And I try my best to keep my website up to date, but I also have ADHD, so so always just email me if you're not sure if if you want to set something up and my calendar link isn't working. Always just reach out.
Well, that was really helpful. Thank you. And I try to tell as many people, even though I'm an ADHD coach, ADHD is still there for me. So I appreciate
Right?
you saying that. So yeah, as always, you guys, for our listeners, you can reach me on my website at easyadhdcoaching.com, and always feel free to email me to get more, if you have questions about this episode, or if you'd like to talk about more information about ADHD. Or if you just want me to ask some more questions to Sarah, email me at easyadhd.com, easyadhd@gmail.com. Whew, sorry, was getting too excited. But anyways, thank you all for being here. I'm going to end the recording. We'll see you guys. Take care of yourself, and we'll talk more.